My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. This is number 2 in our series on 1 Corinthians chapter 15, as we continue to demonstrate that Paul, in this great chapter of 1 Corinthians 15, he was not refuting people who denied the resurrection. He was responding to and refuting a group of people who were denying resurrection life to a given specific group of people, and that specific group of people were those who had died before Jesus. Now then, I want to show you this morning, and we'll have probably a couple of lessons on this particular theme, but I want you to just latch on to the power of what Paul says in light of what people claim the scoffers were saying. Paul says, and now Christ has been raised from the dead and has become the first fruit of those who had fallen asleep. But I want you to notice, Paul says Christ was the first fruit. What does first mean, folks? Does it mean second, third, fourth, fifth? Now look, if Paul is discussing resurrection out of physical graves of anyone and of everyone who had ever died, then Paul's pretty ignorant. Because Jesus was not the first person to be raised out of biological death. Paul himself raised Eutychus from the dead, Acts chapter 20. Which, chronologically is pretty close to the writing here. But the point of fact is, Paul knew that Jesus, in his personal ministry, had raised individuals from the dead. He raised Lazarus from the dead. He raised Jairus' daughter from the dead. So, once again, if Paul is addressing the issue of physical resurrection out of physical death, for Paul to say that Christ was the first fruit was simply historically false. Paul, man, has your memory completely failed you about what you did and about what Jesus did, about what others did? No. Paul is not addressing biological death. Now, make no mistake. The scriptures are clear that Jesus was the first to be raised from the dead. In some sense. The same apostle said, Acts chapter 26, 21 and following, and now, having obtained help from God, I stand before kings and before authorities, before small and great, testifying no other thing, that what Moses and all the prophets said should occur, now watch this, that Jesus would be the first to be raised from the dead. There is no qualification here, i.e. first in rank, i.e. the first never to die, i.e. the first this or that or the other. He is the first to be raised from the dead. He is the first of the harvest. Now let me ask you, those of you who have ever done any farming, gardening, whatever. When you pluck the very first head of corn, do you call it first fruit? Or do you call it 30th or 40th or 50th generation of fruit? No. When you get to pick that very first ripe tomato, that's the first one. Folks, first means first. Revelation 3:14, Christ is the firstborn from the dead. Colossians 1:15 and following, Christ is the firstborn from the dead. Listen to me. Paul's affirmation, his emphatic, his specific declaration that Christ was the first fruit out from among the dead is a total refutation of any and all claims that Paul is dealing with biological resurrection. This issue of Christ being the first to be raised from the dead is devastating to any futurist view of eschatology. And we'll have a whole lot more to say about this issue on the flip side.